Welcome to my fourth Steam Deck Gyro tutorial. This time I'm showing off Splitgate, and I'm going to show two different methods to set up Gyro in this game. And there's a reason I'm going to show two, because there's the keyboard and mouse method, and then there's the gamepad method. And this game does not support mixed inputs. So it's going to force you to use completely one or the other. And doing the all keyboard and mouse method is a lot more precise, but it has a couple of little drawbacks. Same with gamepad. While it has its advantages, it still has the disadvantage of not being as precise as the keyboard and mouse method. But yeah, right now I'm just using the I'm using my all keyboard and mouse configuration here. My controller layout is pretty much to parity with the gamepad controls in this game. But let's start from scratch. By the way, after I'm done setting this up, I'm gonna share my customized layout to the community tab, which you can find under controller settings, and you go up here, you go to community layouts. Once I upload it, you should be able to find it there, and it'll have like a little Steam Deck icon next to it instead of these like PlayStation 4 controller and Steam controller icons. But yeah, so to get started, I'm gonna go to templates here, and I'm gonna start with the keyboard, WASD, and mouse template. Now this is a good base for most shooters to just see how it works. So we got mouse on the trackpad, we got mouse on the stick, we got WASD on the stick here. We also have WASD on the D-pad. And okay, I don't know what we have here. Oh, I believe this is a scroll wheel, I believe. And got aim and fire. So this is just mapping the standard FPS controls you'd see in most games for keyboard and mouse. Now, what doesn't work is, yep, the bumpers are just the scroll wheel, so we can't shoot portals. And shooting is also on the click stick and trackpad click instead of melee attack. So there's quite a few things we have to change here to get the same sort of controls as the gamepad before we get started on the gyro controls. So best way to do that is oh, by the way, this is one of the reasons I don't like the keyboard and mouse settings, and that's because menu navigation is a bit clunky since it forces you to use the mouse cursor and you can't navigate like you would on a controller. But anyway, you go to gameplay here, and this is where the game forces you to choose either between keyboard and mouse or controller controls. So yeah, make sure you're on keyboard and mouse here under gameplay settings. And now let's go to the controller tab here, and let's take a look at the controls. Here it is, controls. There's a little button here, controls. Now this is going to bring up a little Xbox controller right here, and this is where you can take a look at what each input should be doing. So for example, shoot left portal is on L1 and shoot right portal is on R1. So now we got to find out what keyboard keys do that. So now let's go to mouse and keyboard, and we'll go to keybinds, and we'll scroll down and go to actions, I believe. Portal, here it is. Shoot left portal is Q, shoot right portal is E, close left portal Z, and close right portal is X. And to close portals on the controller, it's left and right on the D-pad by default. So let's go back into the game, and let's change the controls here. So hit the Steam button, controller settings, edit layout, buttons, bumpers. So L1, let's go to keyboard. L1 should be Q. R1 should be E. And let's go to the D-pad. Left on the D-pad should be Z. Right on the D-pad should be X. So now let's text. Yep, there you go. I can shoot portals and I can close them, just as you'd expect on a regular gamepad setup. Next should be, let's see, melee. What's the melee key? Let's go to settings, mouse and keyboard, keybinds. Melee is V. So let's go to controller settings, edit layout, button, no, joysticks. We'll go to right stick click, and we're going to make that the V button, the V key on the keyboard. We're also going to do that on the right trackpad. Make that V. And one thing I'll change right here right now is the pressure sensitivity to activate it. So we'll go to the gear icon here. We'll go down to settings, keep it on soft press. And simple threshold is fine. The threshold I personally like is 20,000, but I found that 15,000 is also acceptable. Just anything above 15,000 should be good. And I'm going to set the haptics to high. Okay, let's go back in game and test that out. Yep. Now, up and down on the D-pad, what do those do? Up should be... What should up be? Let's go to the settings. Alright, I gotta do this now, since I don't have click on the trackpad anymore. Go to controller, controls. Up on the D-pad is emote, and down is grenade. So let's go back to the keybinds. To emote is B, and grenade is G. So up is B, and down is G. There's the emote, and there's the grenade. Perfect. We got portals, we can close and shoot them. Aim, fire, reload. Y should be weapon swap. So let's go to edit layout, go to buttons, and let's make Y the scroll wheel down. And B should be crouch, which in this game is both, it's either control or C. And let's test that out. I can swap weapons. I can hold crouch. So let's make that a toggle. So let's go to buttons and go to the C key here. And when instead of a, let's see, where's toggle? Here it is. So just go to C, go to the gear icon, go down to settings, and scroll all the way down to toggle. There we go. Now we got a toggle crouch. And sprinting gets out of the crouch. Oh. Well, here's one issue is just that the since the game is expecting you to be holding it, just pressing it, it's telling the game I'm holding down C the whole time, even if I start sprinting, but now press it again, now it's telling the game I'm not holding it down anymore. So that's one of the downsides here. Let's check the game and see if they have a setting to make it a toggle instead. Let's check, oh, there it is, toggle crouch. So now that we can toggle crouch, instead, let's go back to buttons and disable the toggle here. Because now that you're having two conflicting toggles. So let's disable toggle. There we go. Perfect. And I can change weapons. And is there anything else I'm forgetting? Picking up weapons. That's it. It's is the F key on this, but I don't have any F key bound to anything. Instead, I have just the R key on X. Now, in the game, with the gamepad controls, it's press X to reload and hold X to swap a weapon. So what I'll do here is bind F to the X button. So we're going to go back to buttons, and X, you want it to also be reload though. So what we're going to do is go to the gear icon here. I'm going to add an extra command. So now we can bind two separate commands to the X button. So I'm going to add a command. I'm going to go to keyboard. I'm going to go to F. And next to the gear icon, next to the F key, we're going to go to the gear icon. And instead of a regular press, you see this setting at the top says regular press. I'm going to change that to a long press. So now that means the X button will behave in two different ways depending on if you tap it or if you hold it. So now, if I fire, I can reload. But if I hold X, now I can switch my weapon. This I believe should be tab by default, and that's exactly what it should map to. Let's check here. So go to edit layout, buttons. We're gonna go down to menu buttons. Yep, it's tab, which is the scoreboard key in game. Now I believe we're ready to start customizing the trackpad and gyro, but let me just double check the gamepad controls here. We'll go to game controller. Zoom, fire, shoot portals, movement, sprint, emote, grenade, close the portals, jump and thruster, next weapon, crouch, reload, aiming, melee, scoreboard and pause. Yep, that's everything. All right, cool. Now that we have all the controls mapped correctly, first thing I want to do is make this trackpad way more sensitive than it is right now. This is just not enough range. I personally like one swipe all the way across to do a 180-degree turn. So let's see what gets us there. So go down to trackpads. I'm gonna write trackpad behavior. As mouse is how it should be. Gear icon. Sensitivity. Let's try 500. And let's go in game. And that's not quite sensitive enough. Also, it's set to trackball, so this is something you can disable if you want, but I've learned to like it. Let's raise it up to 700. We're just about there. Let's try a notch further, 750. Now that's a little too far. Maybe they might be all right. 750. Yeah. If it is too sensitive, if you want your sensitivity to be somewhere in between notches, hit Y and you can manually input what you want to use here. So let's like 725 here, for example. And I think that's actually better. I think that's more where I want to be. All right. So that's the trackpad. The stick's probably a little slow for me as well. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to change with my trackpad settings here. Trackball mode medium. This dampening option here, trigger dampening, basically if you can make it so if you're holding any button, trigger, or whatever, it'll lower the sensitivity by a certain percentage amount, and it defaults to 90. So if I set it to left trigger soft pull, that basically means if I'm pulling on the trigger softly on the left trigger, it'll slow down the sensitivity to 90% of what I have it. But I don't personally like to use that. Haptics, I like it on medium for the trackpad, just to give me more of that sort of tactile feedback to build my muscle memory with how I'm moving along on the trackpad. Yeah, all right. Now the gyro. Let's go down to gyro, and we're gonna set this as mouse. Go to the gear icon. I believe I like it around 200 to 20. And I don't like acceleration on this. Movement threshold, this just means what's the minimum amount of movement you have to do with the Steam Deck in order for it to start telling the game you're moving your mouse. I like that at 0, so I'm not going to touch that. Rotation, smoothing, I like the defaults. They're fine. I don't usually ever touch those settings. You can always invert your vertical or horizontal axis if that's more to your liking. The gyro enable button, I like the right stick or right pad touch. This button behavior on just means as if I'm touching the trackpad, it turns on the gyro. If I were to set it to off, that would mean if I touch the trackpad or stick, it disables the gyro, and if I let go, that's when it's on. And combined yaw and roll, that's just this turning it like this and like this, both make the camera turn left and right, and this is how much they contribute to that movement. I'm just gonna leave those as the defaults. And haptics, you don't really need haptics on gyro. I like it personally, but it's really not important. And let me go back to joystick settings. Go to right joystick, joystick mouse, gear icon, and I'm gonna turn up the sensitivity a bit and just see if that's more preferable. It's still a little slow for me. Yeah, that's a lot better. And the gyro feels good. Now, one issue this creates now, though, is menu navigation. So, because I have gyro on touchpad being touched, it might make navigating the menus a little difficult because your mouse cursor will be shaking. And this is just one of the major drawbacks as to why I'm not a huge fan of doing all keyboard and mouse. But this game doesn't really have many great options for switching between gamepad and keyboard and mouse. So yeah, but what I will do is create an action set that disables the gyro just for when I'm navigating the menus. And since I'm not using this touchpad, I can make that switch between the two. You might find other uses for the touchpad yourself, but that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to go down to trackpads here, go to left trackpad. Instead of directional pad, I'm going to make it a single button. So single button. Make it on click to switch action sets. But I need to make a new action set first. Actually, an action layer. So go to right here, default, go to that little gear icon right there. We're going to add a layer. We're going to name this layer gyro off. Now, to make that action layer have the gyro off, you see this part right here where it says action set, press R1, and now we're changing the gyro off controls. So let's go down to gyro and just make that disabled. Now, let's go back to the default action set, go to trackpad, left trackpad click, action sets, and add action layer right here. And it should default to gyro off. Hit confirm. Now let's go back to the gyro off settings and go to trackpads, left trackpad behavior. Let's edit that, click, and remove the action layer. So now, if I'm in game, I have my gyro, I click this, it disables the gyro. I can't do it anymore, it's just my... Yep, and I can do that. So if I need to navigate the menus, I can easily just toggle the gyro off. One last thing, the back grip buttons. I personally don't like using the face buttons for shooters like this. I like to keep my thumb either on the stick or on the trackpad. So I'm just gonna mirror what I did on the face buttons onto the grip buttons. So let's go to controller settings, edit layout, buttons, go down to back grips. L4, I like that's the top left button here. I like to make that my reload button. So let's go to keyboard, R, and I'm also gonna make it do the same thing where I hold to swap weapons. So I'm gonna go to the gear icon, add extra command, make that command F, and make that a long press. Then on R4, the top right button here, I'm gonna make that my jump button, which is the space bar on a keyboard. And L5, make that my weapon swap, which is the scroll wheel down. And R5, I'm going to make that my crouch. So go to keyboard, I'm going to make that C. So now I can crouch, I can jump and fire and reload and switch weapons without ever having to take my finger on my thumb off the stick or the trackpad. And yeah, that pretty much concludes it for the keyboard and mouse control type. So yeah, let me show you how to upload a controller configuration real quick here. So hit the Steam button, controller settings. Now, if you're happy with their custom controls, you go to this gear icon right here, and you go to share layout with community. So I'm gonna give this a name. Let me use the trackpads to type here. Mosquitoes, keyboard and mouse. Gyro. Layout. Where's the exclamation mark here? Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, now let's move on with the gamepad style of gyro controls. This is going to be a bit more involved. There's going to be less button remapping involved, but there's going to be more settings to adjust in game and in the Steam input settings for the trackpad and gyro. So first, let's go to settings here. And let's disable the gyro. Let's go to gameplay and let's switch it to controller. And let's go back, and now you can see my keyboard and mouse controls are not working at all. So let's start with the gamepad with joystick trackpad template. And let's see if that worked. Okay, so this is an issue I've seen with this game where sometimes the gamepad just stops working and you have to reboot it, and you have to make sure you're booted up with a gamepad configuration first. So let's exit the game and try again. Yep, and there you go. Now my controls are working. Let's get... I like to use the assault rifle and sniper rifle for demonstrating the controls here. Okay, so as you can see, my stick sensitivity is really high, and there's a reason for that. And I'm just going to go over what I changed in the default controller settings. So let's go to settings, go to controller settings. So I set horizontal and vertical sensitivity all the way up. I put acceleration all the way down. I left the zoom as the default. Inner and outer dead zones I set to 0. And aim assist, I'll show you how it works with gyro and how it can be detrimental and helpful at the same time. So that's really up to personal preference, but you kind of do get an advantage when playing with gyro. So if you want to be more honest when playing online, set it to 0. But yeah, I'll show the differences there. But yeah, so first of all your controls should already be mapped, since this is just basic Xbox controls mapped to where they should be. And yeah, looks like my trackpad is already pretty good, and that's because I turned up those settings really high in the control settings here. Otherwise, it would be moving at a sluggish pace here. But let's look at our controls. Edit the layout. Let's look at what we're doing with the trackpad here. As joystick, so that's basically what's known as a mouse joystick. So it feels like moving a mouse, but it outputs a joystick to the game. So it's basically telling the game that you're moving the stick with a lot of finesse to get all these accurate movements. But that only really works when you have a really large range of speed to work with. That's how you get it to feel like a mouse. And that's why you have to turn it up all the way, because if you have the sensitivity to default, you only have a really limited range of camera speed movement to work with as you swipe on the trackpad. So let's just look at what we have here. So vertical sensitivity scale. This is just basically describing how much the trackpad outputs vertically versus horizontally, and that's because a lot of shooters like to give you more sensitivity for horizontal movement versus vertical. Custom response curve. This is you can use this to counteract any acceleration curves a game might have on their sticks, but in this one it doesn't feel that bad. Enhanced small movement precision. That's basically if you're moving your thumb just a tiny bit, you still want to move it. You still want it to move the camera in game, and where it is as at default is actually pretty good. And this feels a lot like a mouse. One of the limitations here, though, is you don't get that consistency of the swiping like you do on when you have mapped the mouse to the trackpad. Like when you map the mouse to the trackpad, you can always get a 180 swipe no matter how fast or slow you're moving. But because I'm mapping a joystick to it, you can really outpace the camera movement. So that's something to really keep in mind, and this is one of the biggest disadvantages of using a gamepad configuration, because joysticks tend to have acceleration on them, and they don't behave based on one-to-one movement, but rather speed, depending on how much you're moving them side to side. But yeah, and that's also one of the issues you'll see with the gyro controls as well. So now let's go to one thing to know is, because I put the sensitivity for the stick really high, you might be thinking, well, if I want to do gyro and joystick, my stick is going to be way too sensitive, you know? So there's actually a pretty simple way to counteract that. So let's go to Steam, let's go down to joysticks, go to right joystick behavior, and go to the gear icon, and here it is, horizontal and vertical scale. So if you turn that down to say 60, you're now telling the game that the most you ever push it, when you push it all the way, physically all the way, the game's thinking you're only pushing it 60% of the way. So now it's a lot slower. And this is actually too slow for me, but you know, even that's too slow for me. Let's try 80. Yeah. And most games tend to give you an acceleration curve on sticks. It defaults to linear here, but I believe the game still is applying an acceleration curve. So it's best to leave that alone in linear, because if you change it to, say, a wide acceleration curve, you're just doubling that acceleration curve. And it feels weirder that way, especially side to side compared to up and down. But yeah. I'm gonna leave that on linear. This is all personal preference, of course. You might find that it works better for you. And other than that, I would just leave the rest of the stick controls alone. You can even put haptics on the stick if you want. You can put haptics on literally anything. Now then, let's go back to the gyro, and we're going to do the same thing as we did with the trackpad. Set it as mouse, and we're going to give it a... Oh, sorry, not as mouse, as joystick. That's my bad. And let's just see how that feels before we touch it again. All right, now let me try to stay still and see what's going on. I'm a little shaky, not too bad, but the sensitivity is a little high for me. Actually, it's way too high for me. So let's go to gyro output scale. Go down to gyro here. Go to the gear icon. Go down to another section called gyro, and just turn down the gyro output scale to something that feels comfortable for you. Just feel it out. You can easily change any setting and hit the Steam button to go back in game to see how it adjusted, and hit the Steam button again to go adjust it again. 160 is not that bad for me. Yeah, I like that. Let's see. Anything else I might want to adjust here? You know what? I think all of this already feels good. I don't really need to adjust much here. The minimum output value, maybe try lowering that down to 5,000 and see what it does. It might make you a little more shaky. No, in fact, it feels even better now. It feels a little smoother, more precise. Yeah. Now let me show you, before I show you the difference between aim assist on and off, let me remap the face buttons to the back grips like I did on my keyboard and mouse configuration. So L4, that's going to be my X button. R4 is going to be my A. L5 is going to be Y. And R5 is going to be B. Yep. All right, cool. So here's the thing about aim assist. It's very magnetic. Like, I'm not even touching the stick or anything. And yeah, so if you're playing with gyro, it could give you an advantage with getting your sights on your target, but it can also mess with you quite a bit, because it's if you ever played with a mouse and getting aim assist, you know how terrible that feels, and this is very similar to that. So let's just disable that here. Go to controller. And now I don't get that. But I still have quite a bit of precision in my movement. And I can still... Oh. Forgot to adjust the pressure sensitivity on the trackpad here, and I accidentally meleeed. You see that? Let's go to trackpads. Right stick click, settings, and set that to 20,000. There we go. Oh, I want high haptics on that as well. Yeah, there we go. So, because this game gives you such a high range of sensitivity on the stick, you can actually get very, very close to mouse-like precision with both the trackpad and the gyro aim. And that means you get accurate controller glyphs here telling you which button to press to pick up your weapons, and you get the easier menu navigation that's meant for controllers. So those are the main reasons I tend to prefer going all gamepad over all keyboard and mouse, especially when the game gives me such a large range of sensitivity to work with. So yeah, but that pretty much concludes it. That should be everything covered. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I hope more and more of you guys try out gyro aiming, and especially with the popularity of the Steam Deck. It's been something that Steam controller folks have been doing for many years, and I've been wanting more and more developers to support, but sadly they don't, so we gotta kind of have to do hacky ways of enabling gyro through Steam input. But luckily Valve has been very responsive in providing the tools to do so, and their games tend to have much better support for it because they use their official API. But yeah, let's not ramble on anymore. Thank you.